when you look at the offense, yeah, not a sterling performance against Charlotte, of course, but actually Charlotte has played some decent teams fairly close. Um, but it looks like they've settled into what they want their run pass ratio to be. They've got Graham Mertz at about 20, 25 pass attempts. He obviously barely let the ball hit the ground this past weekend at 20 and 23. They did have some issues running the ball, surprisingly. Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson. I don't think there's a concern about those two guys. So was it strictly offensive line not getting the push last week?
Mostly, Mark. I mean, Charlotte would stack the box, and Florida would kind of run into it anyway. I think it was a pretty vanilla game plan. There wasn't as much motion as we've seen Florida go with. Not getting the wide receiver screens involved or the wide receiver reverses. You saw one to true freshman Andy Jean. The running back screen game wasn't necessarily there, and we've seen that a portion too. So I think the game plan played into it a bit, but I think the most disappointing part was, along the offensive line. Now, keep in mind, Florida was playing without their starting center, Kingsley Aguakin. Micah Mazuka was suspended because of the scuffle versus Tennessee late in that game. Damian George as well for the first half. So Florida's first half, they were playing without their, three of their offensive linemen there. You still would have liked to see a push versus a team like Charlotte. You didn't like in almost every short yardage situation that Charlotte was kind of dictating the trenches there. But you can excuse it, but should it be an excuse, I guess is the best way to put it. So I think, Florida, as long as they get healthy, Kingsley Aguakin, we'll find out later this week if he's going to start there at center for Florida. I think he's the linchpin to kind of get this run game going. But Florida should get Micah Mazuka back, doing able to confirm that, and Damian George should be able to play the whole game after he was only suspended for a half. So it's about, I think, trying to work out this run game. Montrell Johnson doesn't seem to be as in sync as he was with this offensive line. Trevor Etienne still can make some things happen, but Montrell Johnson so far is kind of taking a step back this year. And I think maybe just a little bit of sinking issues with the offensive line. Florida hasn't played the same offensive 5 starters on the offensive line yet this season. So if they get their starters back, they had the starters versus Tennessee, so that lends itself to maybe a much better performance than what we've seen. But they're still shuffling along the offensive line, and maybe they can get that figured out this week versus Kentucky.
Thanks to Disney and Spectrum, I didn't get to see the Utah game. Now, the Tennessee game, I saw most of that. It looks by the numbers, and again, seeing the one game, that Graham Mertz is probably giving you about what you would expect of a pretty positive Graham Mertz version of him.
Yeah, not turning the ball over, and that was a big worry coming from Wisconsin, where he did turn the ball over, and he's taking much better care of the ball, not taking a lot of chances. There's not a lot of downfield shots. It's a lot of short to intermediate throws. But that was still something Gator fans wanted to see based off of not necessarily seeing it with Anthony Richardson last year. It was kind of feast or famine with Anthony Richardson, of course, being able to complete balls down the field. We're not really seeing that for Graham Mertz. He did push the ball a little more downfield versus Charlotte than he did in other games, even the McNeese game a couple games ago. So it is taking care of the ball. But, Mark, I do think we know now, playing Kentucky, going on the road, they're trying to make Graham Mertz beat them. They're probably going to stack the box and make sure him and these Florida receivers can get open and see if they can hit some plays down the field. So big test, I think, on the road at Kentucky this week, just to maybe see how expansive this passing game can get under Graham Mertz.